Hey guys, welcome back to the Workbench. This is where we discuss ceiling fan history, trivia, and technical information, and where we discuss LED lighting. And you guys may have noticed I've been doing a series on warm glow and warm dim bulbs from Philips, Bulbrite, and TCP. And in those various videos, I've been saying, oh yeah, Philips has this, TCP has this, oh wait, I discovered that TCP has this, and so on and so forth. So what I decided to do was to make a document with everything they currently offer and do a Workbench video on it. A formal Workbench video where I'm talking to the camera. I am pointing at you and you get to see my beautiful face in the Workbench behind me and the box wall. So that's what we're going to do. I've got every warm glow and warm dim bulb that I've bought that's not currently in a lamp sitting right here, or at least one of each example. And I've got a document and I've got the catalogs. And we're going to go through it. We're going to go through what they offer. This is what you can currently buy for warm glow or warm dim that I know of. If there's something out there that I didn't include, please message me, email me, comment on the video, and let's include it. So, for those who don't know what warm glow and warm dim are, please go back to my videos with the camera pointed at the Workbench where I'm demonstrating it. But the short version is that when you have an incandescent bulb, I keep one here in case I have an idea. When you dim it, the filament burns at a cooler temperature, and a flame gets redder, oranger, etc. as it burns cooler, and whiter, bluer as it burns hot. That's why if you look in the center of like a gas furnace, you might see a blue flame. So the same is true with the filament in these bulbs. When you dim it, it's drawing less current and burning cooler, it actually is a warmer color and closer to the color of candlelight. And then when you put it to full brightness, it is closer to a pure white, closer to daylight, closer to sunlight, etc. And LED bulbs, as were originally designed, would just be the same color, no matter what light level. And our eyes don't like that, because we expect dim light to be warm and candly and, red and orange and all of that. And we expect bright light to be closer to daylight, closer to sunlight, etc. And so Philips, I believe, was the first company to do it with their warm glow feature, which as you dim their bulbs, they get warmer. But Bulbrite and TCP have it as well. So let's go ahead and let's see what we have to offer. So Philips has a PAR 30S, which is a short. I don't have the package for this one because the package was destroyed in shipping, but that's the PAR 30 short. Does not specify a beam angle. I wish it did. Goes from 3000 Kelvin at full brightness to 2200 Kelvin at the dimmest, and it is a 75 watt equivalent. They also have PAR 20. Still does not specify the beam angle. I wish that it did. Goes from 2700 at full brightness. So these are a little warmer at full brightness than the PAR 30. I don't know why the difference. Down to 2200. Please pay attention to that bottom number. We're going to learn not all the brands are the same. And if you go back to some of my previous videos, a lot of things will make sense now that we're looking at this documentation. If I had had that documentation when we did those videos, they might have been different. 50 watt equivalent. Okay. Then Philips has BA11s. And I'm seeing a lot of different ways to refer to these pointy candle shape bulbs. Philips calls them the BA11. They have them in both E12 and E26, frosted and clear. They dim from 2700 down to 2200, and you can get them anywhere from 25 watt equivalent to 75 watt equivalent. Then Philips has what they call the B11. Again, I'm seeing a few different insignias, which is the less pointy candle shape. They have those in E12 and E26, frosted and clear. Again, they're dimming from 2700 down to 2200, and you can get them in 40 and 60 watts. They have a G16. I don't have an example of that. I can only think of one place in this house where we use G16s, and it's a long story, but it's a long story. I'll show it in a future video if we ever get it working again. But they have G16s, which are small globes. They have them in, by the way, G-shape, regardless of the, this is like a G40, G60, I don't know. The number means how big it is and the letter means what shape, but this is the G-shape. So just for reference, because I don't think I actually have a warm glow G-shape for reference. Uh-oh. We'll edit that in post. So They have G16, which is the small globe, in E12 and E26 frosted and clear. Again, they dim from 27 down to 2200, and they have them in 40 and 60 watt equivalents. Okay, let's move on. We are now in the reflector types. Philips has a BR30, and I'll take that out of the box just so you can clearly see, because I don't feel like it clearly shows. BR30 reflector bulb. The B, by the way, stands for bulge reflector. When they were incandescent, the R30 was the original shape, and then they tried to make the shape more efficient, and they changed it to the BR series. And that comes 2700 dimming down to 2200, and you can get it in either 65 watt equivalent or 100 watt equivalent, which I think is interesting because we'll get to the BR40 in a little bit. They don't have that in the 100 watt equivalent, which why wouldn't you have the bigger bulb? Anyhow, we'll get to that in a second. Next, they have the R20, which I found interesting that it's an R20 and not a BR20, which is the smallest. Not really the smallest. They go down to smaller, but for in this line, the smallest reflector bulb. We'll open that one up and show you. And those, once again, 2700 down to 2200. And these are meant to be a 45 watt equivalent instead of a 50 watt equivalent, which again, I find interesting. Okay, now that has brought us to the BR40, which is the biggest reflector bulb. I mean, they probably are bigger ones, but the biggest one in this series. Biggest, relevant to today's discussion. And again, it's odd, I think, that they have these in a 65 watt equivalent, but not a 100 watt equivalent, but then they have the smaller ones in a 100 watt equivalent. So why wouldn't you have, I would expect this to be a 100 watt equivalent and the smaller one to be 65 watt equivalent, but they didn't consult me, which is really strange. You'd think they would. So I'm trying to put all these back together. Okay, that is all the reflector bulbs. Now we're in type A. They have an A21, which I do not have an A21 here for reference, but it is a bigger, I believe smaller than this. I don't know what A insignia this would be, but it's this shape and bigger than something like this. So somewhere between these two in size. A21, 150 watt equivalent, which I didn't know they made that. I'm going to have to look for that because that'll be useful to me. That dims from 2700 down to 2200. Okay. Then they have A15, which is the ceiling fan bulb size, and I've got plenty of those to show. We'll take one out of the package here. They come, and by the way, that A21 I believe is just frosted. The A15s come in frosted and clear. They come in E12 and E26. They come in 40 and 60 watt equivalent, and they are 2700 dimming down to 2200. I use these a lot. These are probably the most used ones that I have. One of the things I didn't realize until today is that some of mine are probably 40 watt equivalent and some are 60 watt equivalent. I was assuming they were all 40 watt equivalent because I was going by what Amazon says, and these are 60. So that's probably why in some videos they look a little different and whatnot. So that's just something to think about for the future. And then there's A19, which is your most standard 60 watt bulb size, just your standard light bulb. Where's that 40 watt bulb that I had earlier? Just your standard light bulb size. That is an A19. And they have those in frosted and clear. I have a frosted one here. It's one of the only, well, I have both actually. Where's the... I have them in clear and in frosted. And they come in 40 watt equivalent all the way up to 100 watt equivalent, and they are 2700 Kelvin that dims down to 2200 Kelvin. Okay, then they have a G25. Again, I don't have any globe bulbs here. It's this shape, but smaller. And that's not a warm glow or warm dim. That's just one I happen to have under the Workbench. But they have a G25. You can get it in frosted or clear. You can get it in 40 or 60 watt equivalent. And it is 2700 Kelvin. that dims down to 2200 Kelvin. So that's all the Philips products that are currently listed in their catalog. But one of the things that I took away from this that I found really interesting, besides some products that I didn't know existed, is this is the only one that is 3000 Kelvin at full brightness and then dims down to 22. All the rest of them are 27 at full brightness and dims down to 22. That's really interesting. They just only the Par 30. This is kind of a Lone Ranger. There's nothing else similar to it. The closest thing would be these, but these are offered in a multi-pack. This is not. This is harder to find. There's just a lot of things that's different about this one. So that was a very interesting takeaway there. So, okay, let's move on to Bulbrite. Bulbrite has the smallest line of warm glow, warm dim is what they call them, bulbs, which surprised me a little bit because Bulbrite is a huge company. I've dealt with them many times. I'm a big fan of Bulbrite. I've used a lot of Bulbrite products over the years. I spec them at the museum. I spec them at some of my other commercial jobs. Team Bulbrite. But they didn't have a whole lot. Let's rearrange things here and get the Bulbrites front and center. Is that all that I have for Bulbrite here? I think that's all that I have for Bulbrite of, ones that I have here on hand. They have more than that. Let's just go through them. But here's all they have. So first of all their bulbs are frosted. And that's something that I found that was interesting. Philips is the only one doing warm dim filament LED. And for most of my fixtures, I muchly prefer filament LED. So kudos to Philips for that. Thank you, Philips, for that. That is cool. I appreciate that. Nobody else is doing filament. I don't know why. But Bulbrite only has frosted. And all of their bulbs are 3000 Kelvin and dim down to 1800 Kelvin. They dim down to the warmest out of everybody, which is why it looked so good on the Workbench test. I think this was my favorite of the warm dims on the Workbench test. So they have the best dimming range when it comes to color temperature, as well as how well they worked with the dimmer. All their bulbs are either 40 or 60 watt. They don't have anything lower than that. They don't have anything higher than that. And they have A19 right here, just a standard 60 watt equivalent. They have B11. I shouldn't get. I'm guessing that this is the B11. Does it say? I mean, I recognize the shape. Be nice if the package said. I don't know why it doesn't say. It's one of these two. I just can't remember which is the B and which is the CA. I'm pretty sure this is the B11 and this is the C11, but they're just different variations on flame shape. They have G16, which is a globe. Again, I don't have any of those. They have G25, which is a globe. They have G40, which is a big globe. And then they have Edison bulbs, frosted Edison bulbs, which is kind of an odd thing. I actually thought I had one of their frosted Edison bulbs, and I went to double check, and either I don't have it or I can't find it. But yeah, they have frosted Edison bulbs. Why you'd want that is beyond me, but I'm not a big fan of Edison bulbs. So that's what Bulbrite has. And it's interesting, they have the smallest selection, but I do think the best performing warm dim bulbs. Like I said, this was just a champ on the Workbench test, indistinguishable from incandescent. I really liked this bulb. So, Team Bulbrite, but I wish they would expand their line. Now for TCP. TCP has a huge line of warm dim bulbs, which makes me very excited for TCP. They're not a company I was very familiar with before going down this rabbit hole. I bought a few of their bulbs here and there in commercial jobs and things like that, but it wasn't a company I paid attention to. But now I certainly do, because they have 3 different lines of warm dim bulbs, as well as a few other warm dim products. First of all, they have recessed trims that you can put in your recessed light, and it has the built-in light, where it's not a removable bulb. It's just the trim is all one piece. They have those in warm dim. They're from their Allusion series, Allusion with an A, just in case. They have a few different specs of those, so I'm not a big fan of those. I want a socket in my recessed light so that I can change bulbs and try different things, but if you want that, they have it, and they dim from 3000 down to 2000. The next is their Goodlife series, and I have several of their Goodlife series here. Looks like I have 4 of them. Their Goodlife bulbs are glass. And Team Goodlife, I enjoyed these on the Workbench test as well. I've got several of these in use currently. But the Goodlife series are their glass bulbs. They have A15. I don't have any examples of that, but you know from the Philips what those are. Those are the ceiling fan size. There's some here to show you. Ceiling fan size. Small, regular light bulb shape. They have those. They are from 2700 down to 1800 and 25 watt equivalent. It's interesting that they only have those in 25 watt equivalent, but they're, as far as I know, those are the only 25 watt equivalent so far, which is a useful bulb. So I'm glad they have those. Then they have A19, which is a standard shape. Again, I don't have any of those from them, but I do have the example here. This is an old school GE bulb incandescent. That's the shape, standard light bulb shape, A19. And the options for A19, you can either get them that dim from 27 down to 18 or from 32 down to 18. In my Workbench test, I complained that these were just a little bit too cool at full brightness. Well, that's because they have that option when you spec their bulbs. You can spec them at different brightnesses at full brightness, at different color temperatures at full brightness. So with their A19 bulbs, you have that option. You can get 32 at full brightness, or you can get 27 at full brightness. And those are 60 watt equivalent E26. Then they have R20s. I don't have one of their R20s as an example at Philips. It's just the smallest reflector bulb. I did try to get them. They're just not in stock the places that I would normally buy bulbs from. And those are 27 down to 18, 50 watt equivalent, fairly standard. Okay, next is their BR30s, their reflector bulbs. And these are the ones, you've seen these in almost every warm glow video. They're a nice glass BR30. They look like an old school incandescent bulb. They're really cool. But I complained that these were a little cool in terms of color temperature at full brightness. Well, that's because you have that option. You can get them from either 27 to 18 or 32 to 18. Originally, I thought they only offered the 32 because that's all 1000bulbs.com had, and I had to go to their catalog because it wasn't immediately apparent from the website. So you can get these from 27 down to 18, or you can have the ones that I have that go from 32 down to 18. Again, I find them useful. I'm using them in the garage, but I wouldn't want them in my living room as an example. Well, maybe I would, because I don't use my lights in my living room at full brightness unless I'm cleaning. But we've gone down that rabbit hole in the other videos. You get the idea. So that's their BR30s. Then they have their B11s, which I think that's this. Which one of these is the B? This is the B. So they're frosted candelabra. And once again, they have these. You can get them 32 down to 1800 or 27 down to 1800. You can get them in 40 or 60 watt, and they're all E12s. Then the same thing with the F11. And again, they're using a few different insignias, but these are F11, flame shape, pointy. Get the idea. Those are only 32 down to 1800. That's interesting. Does this one say that? Yeah, interesting. So the one shape you can get in either option, and then the F11 shape you can only get 60 watt 32 down to 1800. So that's interesting to me. Okay, they have globes. Again, I don't have any of those to show you, but they have G25s, 27 to 18 and 32 to 18 in both 25 watt and 40 watt. They're all E26. And then they have a G40 globe, which is the big globe. And that is 32 down to 1800. They only have the 32 option for that one, and it's 60 watt equivalent. And then they have their Edison bulbs, which I have one of those here. In case you don't know what an Edison shape looks like, it looks like the first light bulb. Also really useful in case I have an idea. 27 down to 1800 or 32 down to 1800. Which one do I have? I've got the 32. So for whatever reason, 1000 bulbs stocks the 32s. Which, again, there's a place for that. I don't know why you'd want a 32 Edison bulb, though, but here we go. Those are 60 watt equivalent. So that is their Goodlife series. Those are their glass bulbs. And let's move on to their plastic bulbs. And I have two of the plastic pars here to demonstrate. The Allusion series, Allusion with an A, and that's the series that includes their recessed trims, which were in a separate part of the catalog, but they are part of the Allusion series. And then all of their plastic par bulbs. Again, I wish they did glass par bulbs. Maybe they will, maybe somebody else will. But here is the plastic par, and this is a par 38, and this has both the narrow flood option and the flood option, which is 25 and 40 degrees, and these are 3,000 down to 2,000 Kelvin, and they are 90 watt equivalent, which is pretty standard. Does mine say which beam angle mine are? Let's see. You would think that would be something useful to have upon the packaging. It does not say. Interesting. Does it say on the bulb itself? No, of course not. That'd be too much like right. In any case, those are their par 38s. They also have a par 30. I do not have one here. I tried to get one. They were harder to get. They have the par 30s, again, in narrow flood and regular flood, which are 25 and 40 degrees. And they dim from 3,000 down to 2,000. Here's the thing that's interesting about those. Those are also 90 watt equivalent. That's pretty bright for a par 30. Normally par 30s, where's a par 30 for reference? Ha, here we go. Normally par 30s are either 75 watt equivalent or 50 watt equivalent, and par 38s are either 75, 90, 120, or 150 watt equivalent. Those are all pretty common values. A 90 equivalent or a 90 watt halogen / incandescent par 30, that's not something I would have commonly spec'd back in my days of spec'ing incandescent and halogen bulbs. So that's interesting. They do not have another option, but I mean, I guess you can just dim it if you don't want it that bright, you know, or get a dimmer one. Then there is the par 20, which is what I originally started buying from TCP. It's what sent me down this rabbit hole. Is I needed some warm dim par 20s, and at the time Philips wasn't stocking them. They have narrow flood 25 degrees and regular flood 40 degrees, 50 watt equivalent, and these are 3,000 down to 2,000. They also have an MR16 narrow flood, which is 20 degrees, 50 watt equivalent, and those are 3,000 down to 1,800, which is a little interesting that that's different. Okay, two other things interesting about the Allusion series. They have a plastic BR30. I don't have one here, but so you can get a glass BR30 from them in this series, or you can get a plastic one in the Allusion series. I don't know why you'd want the plastic one. Maybe it's cheaper. Maybe it's better in some other way. But the plastic BR30 is a 65 watt equivalent, 3,000 down to 2,000, and they spec their BR30s at 110 degrees, which makes sense. They also have a plastic A19 as a part of their Allusion series. Again, I don't know why you'd want a plastic one when you have the option for full glass, but maybe you want it for damage proof. I don't know. You could have your reasons. And that one is 2,700 down to 2,000, and that is 60 watt equivalent. Lastly, there is one other series. I told you TCP had 3 series of warm dim bulbs, and their last series is called the Starlight series. And I don't have one here. I didn't know about them until I started looking in their catalog. You can Google them. You can look it up. They look like the kind of bulb that would go in like a high bay fixture, but they're not actually designed for that. They seem to be designed for restaurants and things of that nature, to go in like pendant lights and stuff like that. They're basically just a really, really wide, flat type R bulb. They're 110 degree beam angle. They are 3,000 down to 2,000, and they have them like a myriad equivalent wattages all the way up to 200. And you can also get them in colors, not the color of the light, but the bulb itself. Like, where's a plasticky bulb that I could show you? Here. These are pretty plasticky. So let's pretend that this is one of their Starlight bulbs. They're kind of this shape, just a lot wider. This plastic part you can get in red, green, blue, black, different colors. So if you put it in a fixture, like, the bulb can be fancy. I don't know why, but it's something they offer, and I'm glad they do, because them offering more stuff like that in warm dim just means that there's more of a market and more of an audience for warm dim. And you guys know Team Warm Dim over here. Look at all this crap. So, okay. So what are our big takeaways? You know, I like to end each video with a conclusion when I can. Philips is the only one that has clear filaments. So if you want clear filaments, go with Philips. Their warm dims do not dim down as warm as other people's. They only go to 22. And this is the only one that goes up past 27. This goes to 3000. So they're otherwise limited, but they are the only ones that have clear filaments, which I like. Bulbrite has the smallest selection, but just some really good products in that selection. Like I said, this was probably the best performing warm dim bulb of all of them on the various test rig videos. But they only have a small number. Hopefully they'll expand that. TCP has way more options than I thought were out there. A lot of them are floods, a lot of them are pars, a lot of them are BRs. You can get different color temperatures for the starting. You can get different color temperatures for ending. They just have options. And so, again, the main thing that we're really missing at this point would be some glass par 38s. Because this is... and let me actually... That makes me think. Let me look at this real quick. I did... So, yeah. So, TCP has the glass R20 and the glass BR30, but they don't have a glass BR40. The options in which you would use this are pretty limited, so it's really just kind of a nostalgia thing that I wish somebody offered one. If you're somebody who uses BR40s, comment on the video and tell me where. Only place I could think of would be someplace I'd probably rather put a par 38. But I did used to have a bunch of vintage BR40s that just gave really good light. So, you know. So, yeah. Philips for glass par 30, 30s and 20s, and for clear filament. Bulbrite if you just want a standard, you know, frosted bulb, but the dimming function is really good. TCP if you want myriad different options besides those ones I just mentioned. And again, I hope these companies will continue to expand. I hope other companies will add to their line. I'm just a big fan of this technology because there's really no reason to go back to incandescent bulbs except in very specific circumstances. Christmas lights, appliance bulbs, lights wired in series, which is a whole nother conversation. But any place that you're just using dimmable lights, you might as well use warm dim LEDs. There's just no real disadvantage. So, okay. Well, this is longer than I thought I would talk about it for. I hope this has helped somebody. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please comment, send me more things to test. Please email me if you have, you know, oh, you got to try this bulb, especially if you're a manufacturer. If you're one of these manufacturers, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to get your products on the workbench here. So, in the meantime, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And, of course, the way that you can support our sponsors is to continue to buy Fanstick and buy Pedro's. Thanks for watching.